all of you to know that we are having tonight with us an individual who is going to talk with us about unions. We're going to talk generally about unions, Steve, but in specifics we'll talk about the electrical union. And my guest, of course, is Steve Williams, business manager of IBEW local union number 756. And Steve's going to talk to you about, you know, how long he's been doing that. And we're going to talk about some things and how they've kind of changed over the years. Because, well, I'll get into that. I start to get into something, but I'm going to get into it when Steve and I get going, okay? I do want to share just a couple other things with you guys. Number one, I do want you to support and patronize my sponsor. I'm getting to the point where I will have none, which is going to be key and important to me as I move forward with something that I'm going to be getting into. But right now I do have the one remaining, and that is, of course, Herbert Thompson Funeral Home. And you know that they're at 901 Memory Bethune Boulevard in Daytona Beach, Florida. They've been in business for over 65 years. It's a family business, family owned, family operated, and they have been in business, again, all of that time, passing it down from generation to generation to generation. And they provide quality and affordable service, So I do want you to patronize our sponsor, Herbert Thompson Funeral Home, at 901, again, Mary Bethune Boulevard in Daytona Beach, Florida, for quality service. And they, of course, will be handling our bodies. Of course, I know people say, well, you want to know who's handling we will do, my sons will do what I request prior to, as we did for my mother and as she did for all of her brothers, you know, and her sister, in terms of who they wanted to handle their remains. And I know, you know, for a lot of people that is a sad subject, but something I read somewhere which is just so true. And it said that, you know, we cry when somebody dies, and then we get all happy when someone is brought into the world. And when you consider, you know, a lot of the heck that people go through in the world. And, you know, especially if you're a believer and you know that you're going to a better life when you leave this world, we really should be celebrating. That's why you have homegoing celebrations when somebody passes away. And then we should be actually crying when someone is born. Praise God. You know, think about that for a minute. Just think about it and see whether or not you actually agree. Okay? All right. And still, of course, go to the website, www.win-truth.com, so you can then chime in on the survey about the welfare recipients, the applicants, and those who reapply actually having to pass drug testing before they receive their dollars. The last thing that I want to mention to you is this. I'm sure many of you have heard that there is mapping. There are new maps that are in place, and they call them preliminary, but as I was talking to someone last night, they call them preliminary, but they're pretty much set, okay, in terms of the flood insurance rates. And you will have an opportunity, if you live in Daytona Beach, of going to the Daytona Beach Police Station in early September to actually review the maps, see where your home or business falls and what that change in the rating will be. Daytona Beach is going to have a lot of areas changed that were not in a flood zone but will be in a flood zone, okay? And you would want to check that out, and you would want to find out if you are in it. The reason being is that if you were not in a flood zone, you're in a flood zone as a result of the new or the remapping, you will want to get your insurance before that new mapping is finalized, because once it's finalized, you're stuck and you might end up paying the higher rate, which may be in the $1,200 to $1,400 a year range. Now, if you, though, find out prior to the time that they actually confirm that new mapping, then you can get it at the lower rate, which is usually around $365 a year, and they are required to actually allow you to continue to pay that low rate for 2 years. You're talking about a lot of money, and a lot of money being saved, okay? I'm also told that if your property just touches one of the new zone, flood zone areas, that you may be required to pay for that you're being in a flood zone as well. So you will want to check that out so that you can get the insurance now while it's cheap and while you're still rated as not being in a flood zone, and be able to carry that for 2 years. For those of you who are in the city of Daytona Beach, and I would think that you could do this with other cities as well, call their office and give them your address and ask them to check. Now, there was a very nice lady with the city of Daytona Beach who did check for me, and she says that she's willing to check for others as well. Her name is Kimberly Dixon, and that's Dixon K at codb.us. Send email your name and your address information and stuff to her, and she will check that out for you to see if you need to go ahead and get that insurance, that flood insurance, okay? I did, and I got it at the cheaper rate, and you know, they can let me know either I am or I'm not. You know, she said that a small part of my home, it looks like, might be touching one of those areas, so I may end up haven't been required to, but I thought I'd go ahead and do it while it's like 300 and something. All right, so do check that out, and do find out if you're in a flood area, because some areas that were not, I was not, have not been for years, 15 years, and now that they've done the remapping, it looks like that a part of my property may be touching one of those flood areas, which requires that I get flood insurance, and it is expensive. So you want to save money for as long as you can. Okay, now as I've mentioned, my guest is Steve Williams, and for those of you that just tuned in, I'm Gwen Azama-Edwards, former city commissioner, retired city clerk, city of Daytona Beach, president and CEO of AE Enterprises Inc., a consulting firm on politics and ethics. I had someone ask me today, and whenever I say that, Steve, they always say, politics and ethics, do those two things go together? And I always say, they should, don't you think? And they say, of course it should, but normally it doesn't, you know, and especially in this day and time. And you can probably relate to that as much as I can, Steve. But Steve Williams, again, is business manager, IBEW, the local union 756. Steve, how long were you saying that you have been a part of the electrical union?
Well, I started in 1968 as an apprentice. I lived here my entire life, third generation, Volusia County resident. And my mom, bless her heart, who's now 87, still lives here, went to Mainland High School as well. And she raised 4 children on her own. My father died at 41 at a young age. I was like 12. So in any event, obviously all of us children had to find work as soon as possible. And I was working produce department in Winn-Dixie, there at Westgate Shopping Center, you might remember. And had the opportunity to join this apprenticeship program sponsored by the IBEW and the National Electrical Contractors Association. So I jumped all over it as a career move, basically, at 17 years of age. And I haven't looked back since. It's been a wonderful trade. It's been a great educational opportunity. And everything I've gotten as an adult from that, both in education and in financial security, came from the IBEW and the training I received that was paid for tuition-wise throughout my apprenticeship. And that started in 1968, so it's been a while.
And has a lot changed in terms of that field over the years?
Unfortunately, I think it has, and that the bar has been lowered somewhat. When I came into the trade, there was like 100 applicants waiting to get into the program. They were screened by a joint apprenticeship training committee, and not everyone suited for the electrical trades, obviously, and not everyone was taken in as apprentices. Since then, the bar has been lowered somewhat in expectations, somewhat in what is required in your training. We used to all have to have, and we require that now, but only because it's it's part of our protocol and policy, that you receive what we call a journeyman's license after completion of your 4-year apprenticeship training. Once you go to school 2 nights a week, you're required to have 800 hours of training in classroom and 8,000 hours of on-the-job training in the field working with other